Right now, the smartest person in your company is probably the most likely to fail in the AI era.
It sounds completely backward, doesn't it?
I mean, it really does. According to the psychological research we're unpacking today, their massive intellect is actually the exact weapon they'll use to, sabotage their own survival.
Yeah, because we're all conditioned to believe that raw intelligence is this ultimate safeguard against disruption. Like, if you're smart, you're safe.
Right, but they're going to use all that processing power not to adapt, but to build this brilliant, impenetrable fortress around an entirely obsolete worldview.
Exactly. When the whole framework of reality shifts overnight, high intelligence that's disconnected from psychological flexibility just makes you faster at running in the wrong direction.
Which is honestly terrifying to think about.
Yeah.
But anyway, welcome to the deep dive. I'm so thrilled you're here with us today.
It's great to be here. We have a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. The core mission for our discussion today is massive. We are exploring why human beings, multi-billion-dollar companies, and even whole societies seem to hit a psychological brick wall when the world changes too fast.
And crucially, how we can actually fix it. We aren't just going to admire the problem today.
Right. We are basing our entire conversation on a single, incredibly dense, but totally fascinating document. It's titled TRI Technical Note, The Ontological Adaptation Gap.
Written by Professor Hisataka Takasugi.
Yeah, from the Takasugi Research Institute over in Tokyo. We'll just refer to him as Professor T for short.
Mm-hmm.
And the institute studies this field they call metaphysical psychology.
Which I know sounds incredibly abstract, like something you'd study in a philosophy seminar.
Totally. But the implications are aggressively practical.
They really are. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this document isn't actually about technology failing us. It has very little to do with, the code or the hardware of the AI era.
Right. It's about us.
Exactly. It's about the specific architecture of human psychology. It's about how our internal reality models fail to keep up with the external world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am genuinely obsessed with how this paper connects clinical psychology, human history, and AI into one unified theory.
It scales beautifully. Professor T makes the case that this exact failure explains everything from a new retiree losing their mind on a Tuesday morning because they have no identity,
to an entire civilization facing technological disruption that just, throws its core values into total chaos.
Right. It's not a dry business school case study on algorithm deployment.
Not at all. It's a blueprint for surviving the next 10 years without losing your identity. So let's start with this massive term right at the center of the paper, the Ontological Adaptation Gap.
Or OAG for short. We'll be using that a lot.
Yeah, OAG. Now, an ontology in this context isn't the philosophy 101 definition. Here, it basically means your operative model of reality.
It's the lens through which you define what is real, what is valuable, and how the world actually functions on a daily basis.
Right. And the gap itself is defined as the growing distance between two specific speeds.
The accelerating speed at which external reality is changing, and the lagging speed at which we can revise our internal model to match that new reality.
And Prof. Teiji argues that this lag isn't some sort of bug in the human operating system.
No, it's a fundamental feature of it. This is a universal human phenomenon.
I kept trying to visualize this while reading the source. It's basically like trying to navigate a brand new modern city using a physical paper map drawn in 1995.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. You aren't lost because you were a bad driver. You aren't lost because your car is broken. You're lost because your map, your ontology, no longer matches the territory.
You're driving around looking for a Blockbuster video, and the building is now a massive cloud server farm.
Exactly. The 1995 map analogy is a good starting point. But the paper makes it so much heavier.
It does. Let's complicate that analogy a bit to capture the psychological weight of what Prof. T is really saying.
Yeah, go for it.
It's not just that your map is old and therefore mildly inconvenient. It's that you spent the last 20 years meticulously memorizing every single street on that 1995 map.
Oh, right. Like, you're the local expert.
Exactly. Your entire sense of self-worth, your social status, your livelihood, it's all based on being the absolute best navigator of that specific 1995 version of the city.
So handing you a real-time updated GPS today doesn't just make your old map useless.
No, it makes you feel obsolete.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that fundamentally reframes the struggle. If someone hands me a GPS and I throw it out the window, I'm not doing it because I hate technology.
Right, you're doing it for a much deeper reason.
I'm doing it because if the GPS is right, then the last 20 years of my life were a total waste.
Exactly that dynamic. And that is why it is so crucial to view this gap across different scales of human life, which the source text does a phenomenal job of breaking down.
Yeah, let's look at the individual level first.
Yeah.
The paper points to career paralysis or deep identity crises as symptoms of this gap.
Think about a professional whose deeply specialized niche knowledge has suddenly been automated by a large language model.
Like a specific type of financial modeling, maybe.
Sure. Or think about a completely different scenario the paper mentions, the parent dealing with an empty nest.
Oh, let's linger on the empty nest parent for a second, because that made the ontology concept so much more tangible for me.
It's a great example of an operative model in daily life.
Right. If you're a parent of 3 kids, your operative model of reality for 18 years is completely dictated by school schedules, meal planning, sports practices, and just constant vigilance.
Your value is inextricably linked to being needed every single hour.
Exactly. Then one day in late August, the youngest kid goes to college. The house is silent. The physical reality has changed instantaneously.
But your internal model, your ontology of I am the active protector and scheduler, hasn't updated at all.
And what happens? Panic, depression, a profound sense of disorientation. You might start micromanaging your adult child from afar.
Or fall into a deep malaise because the map you are using says, drive kids to soccer, but there is no soccer field anymore.
The same mechanism applies to the unstructured retiree who suddenly has no meetings to attend. Their daily reality shifted, but their internal model of who they are did not.
And then the paper scales that exact same psychological mechanism up to the organizational level.
Right. It points to companies exhibiting strategic rigidity or completely failing to adopt AI in any meaningful way.
It's companies clinging to old assumptions about what work actually is.
You see executives demanding that employees sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, performing these performative keystrokes.
Because the executive's ontology of productivity was forged in a 1980s factory mindset.
Right. They literally cannot comprehend a reality where an employee uses an AI to do 8 hours of work in 45 minutes.
Because if they accept that new reality, the executive has to ask themselves what their own role is in managing that employee, which is terrifying.
And the scale goes even larger, right? Professor T takes us into religious institutions.
He does. The gap shows up there as the immense, often highly destructive tension between a doctrine of fixed historical revelation and an aggressively evolving modernity.
Like the historical clashes between the church and early astronomers.
Or modern clashes over bioethics and gene editing. The institution has an ontology written centuries ago, and the external reality is suddenly completely different. The friction is immense.
And we see it in political systems, too. We inherit these structural frameworks like constitutions and legislative bodies that were brilliantly designed for a much slower world.
A physically constrained world, yeah.
But now they're buckling under novel, hyper-complex governance challenges. You have a legislative body comprised of people whose average age is 65.
Trying to use 19th century parliamentary procedures to regulate decentralized, algorithmic social media networks.
It's the 1995 map, trying to navigate a quantum realm. It's absurd when you think about it.
Which brings us to the ultimate scale the paper addresses, which is civilizations as a whole.
The disorientation of transformative, epical, technological changes.
Right. The Industrial Revolution, the Information Revolution, and now the AI Revolution.
When the bedrock categories we use to make sense of human life are just ripped away and rendered completely inadequate, the entire civilization experiences the gap. So hearing all of this, whether it's the empty nest parent or the obsolete executive, the obvious question screams out for you as a listener.
Right. If the map is wrong, why not change it?
Exactly. If holding on to the map is causing us immense pain and confusion, why don't we just draw a new map? We're rational creatures, supposedly.
Supposedly, yes.
Why do we hold on to these outdated models so tightly when they're clearly destroying us?
That is the pivotal question of the entire text. And to answer it, TRI introduces their unified theory of ontological rigidity.
Okay, let's get into the unified theory.
We have to start with a foundational premise about human cognition. Human beings do not passively perceive reality.
We aren't just video cameras objectively recording raw data from the universe.
Exactly. We actively construct reality. We filter billions of sensory inputs. We interpret them, and we build a cohesive narrative model so we can function.
And here's the catch, right? Once that model is built, the human brain, expends an enormous amount of energy protecting it.
Huge amounts of energy.
Yeah.
The source details 3 specific psychological mechanisms that actively, aggressively prevent us from revising our models.
Even when those models are failing us miserably.
Especially then.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The first mechanism the paper identifies is called mustification and demandingness.
And the paper notes this stems from REBT, which is rational emotive behavior therapy.
Mustification is such a bizarrely perfect word.
It really is. It describes exactly what's happening internally.
It's essentially what happens when we take our preferences, things we would simply like to be true, and we unconsciously mutate them into absolute life or death requirements.
Right. The world must work a certain way. My specific expertise must be valuable to my employer. People must respect the title I earned.
We need to explain the mechanism of why the brain does this, because it isn't just stubbornness, is it?
Not at all. From an evolutionary perspective, the human brain is a threat detection machine designed to keep us alive in a dangerous environment.
Like constantly scanning the horizon for predators.
Yes, but in the modern world, we rarely face physical predators. So the brain's threat detection system latches onto social and psychological constructs instead.
So when you turn a preference,
Yeah.
like, I prefer to be seen as the smartest engineer on the team,
Into a mustification, like I must be the smartest engineer or I am worthless.
you are essentially telling your amygdala that this social status is equivalent to physical survival.
Exactly. So when a younger engineer comes in using an AI tool that writes code 10 times faster, the older engineer's brain doesn't register it as a hassle.
Or a learning opportunity, like HR might call it.
Right. It registers as a psychological catastrophe. A tiger is in the room.
Wow. The brain literally cannot differentiate between a threat to your physical body and a threat to your mustified social identity.
It triggers a full fight-or-flight response. You turn a practical workplace problem into a devastating emotional threat.
Which ironically shuts down the prefrontal cortex, which is the exact part of the brain you actually need to adapt to the new tool.
It's a brutal irony, and that bleeds perfectly into the second mechanism, which is ego attachment and identity investment.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The operative assumptions we make about the world don't just sit in some detached filing cabinet in our minds, do they?
No, they get wired directly into our sense of self.
So revising a model isn't just a matter of intellectual curiosity.
Not at all. If you've spent 20 years being the undisputed go-to person for a specific type of legal contract review,
And then you have to revise your reality model to accept that an AI can do it in 4 seconds.
it means asking a terrifying question. Who am I if this skill is no longer needed?
This makes the act of revision feel existentially threatening. You aren't just changing your mind about a fact. You feel like you are erasing yourself.
You are committing identity suicide, essentially.
Okay, wait, slow down. I'm struggling with this part a bit. I have to push back on this idea that ego attachment is some sort of psychological flaw we need to fix.
Go ahead, what's your pushback?
Isn't it completely natural and honestly necessary to want our hard-earned expertise to stay relevant?
Right.
We spend decades paying off student loans, climbing ladders.
Sacrificing weekends to master these skills, yeah.
Exactly. How is a professional supposed to just untangle their entire identity from their job when all of Western society constantly tells us that we are what we do?
It's a very fair point. Literally, the first question anyone asks you at a dinner party is, what do you do?
Right. So society built this trap.
It is entirely natural. You are completely right that society incentivizes ego attachment to our economic output.
So why is Professor T calling it a mechanism of rigidity?
Because what Professor T is pointing out is that while it is natural, it is currently profoundly maladaptive. The environment has changed too much.
As AI systems absorb the tasks that were formerly tied to that human expertise.
Exactly. So the fierce resistance we see in the workplace isn't just technological conservatism. It is existential self-protection.
The lawyer fighting against the adoption of AI contract review isn't defending the sanctity of jurisprudence.
No, they're defending their right to exist, to be valued, and to answer that dinner party question with pride.
They're defending their ego. Society told us to fuse our identity to our economic utility, and now technology is commoditizing that utility.
What's fascinating here is that this is why the crisis is so profound. The exact same mechanisms that cause clinical psychological suffering in a therapist's office,
Like anxiety, depression, a crisis of self-worth.
are now scaling up to cause civilizational maladaptation. It's the same core psychological dynamic, just playing out globally.
That brings us to the third mechanism, which I think explains the daily news cycle better than anything else.
Yes, certainty seeking and ambiguity intolerance.
The paper argues that humans possess an overwhelming preference for a definite account of reality over uncertainty.
Even if that definite account is objectively bad, painful, or completely false.
We will actively filter out ambiguous signals just to maintain a stable worldview. The paper calls this premature ontological closure.
Think about the mechanics of ambiguity intolerance for a second. Uncertainty requires massive cognitive load.
Because if you don't know the rules of the game, you have to constantly scan the environment.
Right. You have to calculate probabilities and remain in a state of high alert at all times. It is physically and mentally exhausting.
So, to conserve energy, the brain simply demands closure. It says, just tell me the rule, even if the rule is terrible, so I can stop calculating.
I'd rather be confidently wrong than anxiously unsure.
I see this all the time. People will cling to a toxic job or a dysfunctional relationship or a dying industry purely because it is a known entity.
The misery is predictable. Adapting to AI or adapting to a new economic reality requires wading into pure ambiguity.
Because we have no idea what the workplace will look like in 5 years. We just don't.
And rather than sit in that uncomfortable gray area, people just snap to a premature closure.
They either say, AI is a useless fad that will blow over, or they say, AI is a godlike entity that will replace us all tomorrow.
Both are premature closures designed to relieve the anxiety of ambiguity. It's easier to say the world is ending than to say, I don't know.
That is so true. And if we look at the timeline of human history, this collision between our deep biological need for certainty and the relentless reality of technological change is peaking right now.
The specific nature of the AI revolution is fundamentally different from what has come before. To understand why, we have to look backward.
Yeah, the historical timeline in the paper is absolutely fascinating. It walks us through these eras of commoditization.
It shows how technology has systematically moved up the chain of human capacity, commoditizing what we thought made us special.
Let's walk through this sequence. First, we have the industrial era. This era commoditized physical labor, right? Muscle power.
Right. For tens of thousands of years, the primary economic engine of humanity was muscle. If you wanted to build a pyramid, plow a field, or forge a sword, you needed human or animal muscle.
Your physical strength was your absolute premium.
Then, the steam engine and the mechanized loom arrive. Suddenly, machines render physical human strength economically marginal.
A machine could do the work of 100 strong men without needing sleep or food. And the paper notes this wasn't a smooth transition.
Not at all. It caused profound generational displacement.
Like the Luddites, they weren't just angry people smashing machines for fun, were they?
No, they were highly skilled textile workers whose entire ontology, their identity as master craftsmen, their economic security, was being destroyed overnight.
They experienced the ontological adaptation gap viscerally. And it took decades of suffering and societal restructuring before the workforce eventually shifted.
Right. It shifted to administrative and knowledge work. We essentially said, okay, the machines have our muscles, but we still have our brains.
Which leads us to the second era, the information era. Starting in the mid-20th century, digital technology and eventually the internet commoditized information itself.
The access to it, the organization of it, the transmission of it.
If you think about a white-collar worker in 1975, a huge part of their value was simply being a human filing cabinet.
Exactly. They knew where the data was, they knew the historical precedent, they memorized the endless regulations.
If you had the information, you had the power in the office.
But then search engines and massive digital databases arrived. Suddenly, memorizing facts became a cheap commodity.
So the premium in the workplace shifted again. It was no longer about who possessed the most facts.
The premium shifted to analytical capability. It became about judgment. The machine can find the data, but the human has to make sense of the flood of data, spot the patterns, and write the report.
And now we hit the AI era. And this is the real gut punch of the paper.
Yes. The AI era is commoditizing cognition itself.
AI is no longer just retrieving data. It is replicating pattern recognition, inference, synthesis, and analysis.
And it's doing it at a speed and cost that a human brain simply cannot compete with.
The paper gives examples we are seeing right now, today. Routine legal analysis, massive financial modeling, complex medical diagnosis.
We're generating thousands of lines of functional code in seconds. It is a stark sequence.
It really is. First they came for our muscles, then they came for our filing cabinets, and now they're coming for our frontal lobes.
And this sequence forces humanity to confront a deeply ontological question, perhaps the most important question of our time.
What is the distinctive contribution of a human being?
Exactly. What is the human premium?
That gives me chills. Because if you look at past eras, our initial answers to that question failed every single time.
They did. The muscle worker said, "My distinctive value is my physical strength." The machine proved that wrong, leading to massive crisis before forced adaptation.
The filing clerk said, "My value is my encyclopedic memory." The search engine proved that wrong.
The AI era is forcing the same question, but the stakes are exponentially higher and the timeline is much more compressed.
If raw intelligence, deep domain expertise, and analytical capability are all commoditized by algorithms, what is left?
What is the core of human value?
Exactly. If an AI can outthink us, outcode us, outdiagnose a patient, and outread a journalist, what do we actually have left to offer?
Are we just fleshy batteries at this point?
Right. What do we do? That brings us to the most vital part of Professor Shree's research and TRI's ultimate answer to the AI era.
The antidote to the ontological adaptation gap. They call it reflective agency.
Reflected agency. Let's define this clearly and slowly, because it is the cornerstone of how we survive this transition.
The paper defined reflective agency as the meta-level capacity to observe your own operative assumptions, subject them to genuine examination, and revise them based on evidence.
And crucially, to act coherently under irreducible uncertainty. Let's break that down into plain English for a second.
It essentially means stepping outside of your own brain for a moment.
It is the ability to look at the map you're holding and say, I am holding a map. It might be completely wrong.
Let me look at the actual street, compare it to the map, and redraw the map if I need to without having an existential meltdown.
Yes. And it is so important to distinguish what reflective agency is not.
It is absolutely not intelligence.
In fact, this was the part of the paper that genuinely shocked me. The paper cites the brilliant organizational researcher Chris Argyris to point out a massive paradox.
The Argyris paradox, yes. High analytical intelligence often coexists with extremely low reflective agency.
Highly intelligent professionals like doctors, lawyers, top-tier engineers, C-suite executives are often the worst at adapting.
They are notoriously terrible at it.
Wait, I really need to understand this. If I am smart enough to code a complex AI or pass the bar exam, shouldn't I be smart enough to adapt to a changing market?
You would think so, but why is Professor saying smart people are actually worse at this?
Yeah, why?
It comes back to how they have used their intelligence throughout their entire lives. Highly intelligent people have spent decades being rewarded for being right.
Their identity is entirely built on their cognitive superiority.
Precisely. When they face a situation where their fundamental assumptions are suddenly wrong, they don't use their massive intellect to examine those assumptions.
They use their massive intellect merely to defend their existing assumptions.
They are incredibly skilled at arguing, rationalizing, and debating why they are right.
They use their cognitive processing power to build a fortress around their ego, rather than using it to examine the foundation of the fortress itself.
That is a phenomenal metaphor. Intelligence is just the defense contractor.
It builds the walls higher, it builds thicker armor, it deploys better verbal weapons to defeat anyone who challenges them.
But reflective agency is the general who is willing to look at the map, realize they built the fortress in the middle of a sinking swamp, and actually order an evacuation.
While the defense contractor just wants to keep building more walls as the swamp swallows them whole.
Exactly. The higher the intelligence without reflective agency, the heavier the armor, and the faster you sink.
So, reflective agency isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It is about being the person most willing to admit the room might be completely upside down.
Yes. The paper highlights a few specific capacities associated with this agency. One is ontological flexibility.
Holding your reality models lightly, not treating them as sacred texts that can never be questioned.
Another is meaning construction. This is a huge one. An AI can synthesize data, but it doesn't care about the data.
It has no skin in the game. It doesn't have a life or goals.
Humans have the ability to engage with value, purpose, and ethics without needing a mathematical algorithm to give us the answer.
And finally, human coherence under uncertainty. The ability to stay integrated, calm, and purposeful when you are surrounded by ambiguity and don't have all the answers.
And Professor T makes a crucial point here. These capacities, meaning construction, flexibility, ambiguity, tolerance, these aren't just soft skills that are left over after AI takes the real work.
We shouldn't view this as humans just getting the scraps of the economy.
No. Prof. Marini argues that these represent the deepest stratum of human adaptive capacity.
They were always the most essential parts of us, but they were temporarily obscured by our past historical obsession with muscle power and data processing.
We literally forgot what made us special because the economy was paying us to act like machines.
And now that actual machines are doing the machine work, we are forced to become fully human again.
And here's the most optimistic, hopeful claim in the entire document, the thing that keeps us from being a totally bleak deep dive.
Thank goodness, because it gets heavy.
Reflective agency is developable. It is a muscle.
It is not a fixed genetic trait. It's not something you are just magically born with or you aren't. We can learn it. We can cultivate it.
But it requires deliberate, deeply uncomfortable work. It's not easy.
Right. So if we can learn it, how do we level up? Telling me to hold my reality models lightly sounds beautiful on a yoga retreat, but how do I actually execute that on a stressful Tuesday morning when my boss is yelling at me?
Does Prof. Marini give us a roadmap?
Yeah, does he?
He does. He lays out the 5 stages of ontological development. This is the developmental trajectory from rigid, panic dependence all the way up to full agency.
And the source makes a very clear caveat right up front, which we should mention. These are not static personality types.
You aren't just stamped as a stage 2 person for life. These are positions on a continuum.
And, crucially, they can vary wildly by domain in your life. You might operate at a very high level of flexibility at work, leading massive change initiatives.
But be totally rigid, defensive, and stage 1 in your personal relationships or your political views.
Oh, absolutely. I could definitely think of a few CEOs who are visionary, flexible disruptors in the boardroom. But if their spouse changes the brand of coffee at home, they have a complete meltdown.
We all have our blind spots. Let's really dig into these 5 stages because this is where the theory hits the pavement.
Okay, stage 1 is ontological dependence. In this stage, reality is fixed. It is self-evident.
The map is the territory. Your assumptions are completely invisible to you. They're just the way things are.
You don't realize you are wearing blue-tinted glasses. You just think the whole world is blue.
At this stage, any change to the environment is viewed purely as a loss, a threat, or a catastrophe. This is where mustification is at its absolute peak.
Let's ground this. Let's create a hypothetical scenario and track a single person through all 5 stages.
Sounds good.
Let's imagine a mid-level corporate manager. We'll call him David. David's entire identity, his sense of authority, and his value to the company is built on his mastery of data tracking.
He knows every single granular detail of his team's daily metrics.
He builds the spreadsheets, he runs the weekly reporting meeting, he catches the tiny errors. That is his kingdom.
In stage 1, his invisible assumption is, my fundamental human value equals my ability to track and report this data.
If anyone suggests changing the reporting software, David fights it to the death.
A very common scenario. So David is comfortably in stage 1. Then comes stage 2, ontological awareness.
A disruption occurs. In our scenario, the company rolls out an enterprise AI system that fully automates the reporting.
It pulls the data, cleans it, analyzes it, and generates a flawless report in real time, 247. It does it perfectly.
For David, this isn't just a software update. This is the visceral panic we talked about. This is an existential threat.
Stage 2 forces the incredibly uncomfortable realization that his model of reality, I am the indispensable data guy, is broken.
Ambiguity enters his life, and it is highly distressing. He doesn't know what his job is anymore.
He might start bad-mouthing the AI, searching for tiny hallucinations in the AI's report to prove it's useless.
Or doubling down on micromanaging his team to invent new things to track, just to feel useful.
He is experiencing the ontological adaptation gap fully. The external reality moved faster than his internal model.
Now, to survive, David must move to stage 3, which is ontological reflection.
This is the turning point. This is where active examination begins.
Instead of just reacting to the AI as an enemy, David has to step back and ask a terrifying question. What assumptions am I holding that are generating this feeling of panic?
This perfectly aligns with what our guys call double loop learning.
Wait, what's the difference between single loop and double loop learning? I want to make sure we define that for the listener.
Single loop learning is trying to solve a problem within your existing rule set. The thermostat drops below 68 degrees, the heater turns on, it solves the immediate problem.
So David, trying to find flaws in the AI so he can keep his spreadsheet, is single loop learning.
Exactly. Double loop learning is questioning the rule set itself. It's asking, why is the thermostat set to 68 in the first place? Should we even be in this building?
Oh, wow. So for David, double loop learning is asking, Why did I assume my only value was data tracking? Who told me that?
Is that actually what the company needs from me?
That's powerful. So in stage 3, David starts actually dissecting his own ego, which leads to stage 4, ontological flexibility.
At this stage, David has successfully decoupled his identity from the spreadsheets. Revision becomes voluntary.
He can entertain alternative models of reality without feeling like he's going to die. The source refers to this as achieving a want mode ontology.
Exactly. In want mode, you can pursue your goals intensely, like you want to be successful, you want to lead your team, but you don't turn those goals into absolute psychological necessities.
If the environment changes, you adapt your methods. You have achieved genuine ambiguity tolerance.
David can look at the AI not as a replacement, but as a tool.
And finally, the highest level, stage 5, ontological agency. This is the ultimate goal.
At this stage, you are consciously deploying, constructing, and revising models of reality as deliberate instruments to serve your chosen goals.
You aren't just reacting to change anymore. You are highly generative. You are shaping the models you use to interact with the world.
So what does David look like at stage 5?
David at stage 5 completely reinvents his role. He uses the AI to handle all the data tracking.
And he reconstructs his reality model to say the data is just the baseline.
My actual value, the human premium, is strategy, mentoring my team, interpreting the AI's findings for the board, and constructing meaning out of the numbers.
He went from a panic spreadsheet jockey to a strategic leader because he used his reflective agency to survive the disruption.
It is a beautiful trajectory, but this raises a deeply important question, doesn't it?
It does. How much deliberate work are individuals, and more importantly, are companies, putting into addressing these deep psychological mechanisms?
Because progressing from stage 1 to stage 5 does not just happen passively as you get older. Time does not cure ontological rigidity.
It requires actively, consistently fighting against ego attachment and mystification. It requires a tremendous amount of internal work.
And that brings up a really cynical but fair pushback.
Let's hear it.
While all of this psychological development sounds amazing for individual therapy or a personal growth seminar, how does this actually translate to the harsh bottom-line realities of the corporate world?
That is the big question.
If I am an executive and I walk into a board of directors meeting with the shareholders breathing down my neck and I say, guys, our key 3 profits are down because we lack ontological flexibility.
They are going to laugh you out of the boardroom.
And fire me. They'd say, we need ambiguity tolerance. No, we need higher margins.
It sounds soft to the traditional corporate ear, absolutely. But that is where Prof. T translates the psychology into hard organizational dynamics.
The bridging concept here is operational intelligence.
If reflective agency is the internal psychological capacity of an individual, operational intelligence is the applied expression of that capacity in leadership and organizational design.
It is the dynamic deployment of reflective thought under conditions of extreme market uncertainty.
It is the ability to act, to allocate capital, and to lead teams without demanding premature certainty.
So, to put it bluntly, when we see companies completely bungle their strategic workforce planning, or when a massive multi-million-dollar AI rollout fails spectacularly and everyone goes back to using email and Excel.
The paper is saying those are not technological failures. It's not that the AI was bad.
It is an organizational expression of stage 1 and stage 2 dynamics.
It's a collective inability of the leadership to revise their outdated assumptions about how work gets done. The technology is just a mirror reflecting the organization's psychological rigidity.
And this leads to a fundamental shift in what the source calls the executive premium. We need to look at what leadership actually means in this era.
The executive premium is the distinctive value that senior leaders bring to an organization. It's the reason they are paid the big bucks.
Historically, throughout the information era, that premium was based on 3 distinct pillars: information access, domain expertise, and high-stakes decision authority.
Let's break those down. Information access meant the CEO simply knew things the frontline workers didn't. They had the macro view.
Domain expertise meant the senior partner at the law firm had 30 years of case law memorized.
And decision authority meant they were the only ones authorized to pull the trigger.
But AI is compressing all 3 of those pillars to 0. AI democratizes information access. A junior analyst with an AI can pull the macro view.
AI synthesizes domain expertise instantly. It knows the case law better than the senior partner.
Exactly. The historical pillars are crumbling. So the new executive premium has to shift radically.
If your only value was hoarding data and dispensing it downwards, an algorithm can and will replace you?
The new value of a high-level executive is maintaining organizational coherence under profound uncertainty.
It is the ability to recognize when deeply held organizational assumptions need to be revised, and executing that revision without triggering everyone's defensive ego routines.
It is modeling ontological flexibility publicly. Modeling it publicly. That is huge.
A huge part of the new premium is helping your teams navigate what the paper calls level 4 and 5 ontological disruptions.
These are crises of meaning and identity, but bad managers misdiagnose them as level 1 and 2 process problems.
So if a team is resisting a new AI tool, a bad manager says they just need more software training.
A high-premium executive recognizes, no, they don't need training. They are terrified of becoming obsolete. We have an identity crisis, not a software problem.
That is the essence of operational intelligence.
So what does this all mean for the future of leadership? If I'm hearing this right, the old archetype of the command and control, I have all the answers, never show weaknesses boss, is basically obsolete.
It's a liability now. The new high-value executive is someone who is entirely comfortable standing in front of their entire company and saying, I don't know.
I don't know what this market will look like in 2 years, but here is how we are going to test our assumptions together.
And crucially, they have to exist in a corporate structure where they don't get fired for admitting uncertainty.
That is the necessary evolution.
Yeah.
The new leader's job is not to be the smartest, most certain person in the room.
Their job is to cultivate a culture of ontological revisability within the organization.
Cultivating a culture of ontological revisability. I love that phrasing. It turns adaptability from a buzzword into a psychological practice.
They have to architect psychological safety so the organization can continuously update its map of the world without the employees feeling like they are constantly under existential threat.
But as we get to the final section of the paper, Professor T doesn't stop at the corporate level. He pushes this theory to its absolute limits.
He does. He scales it up to the largest possible canvas. And this is where the theory shows its true ambition and, frankly, its urgency.
This isn't just about saving Fortune 500 companies or saving individual careers. It is about the survival of our broader human systems.
We're talking civilizational scale here. The paper introduces TRI's master proposition.
I want to read this directly from the text because it serves as the thesis statement for the entire document.
Yeah.
The adaptive capacity of any human system is constrained by the revisability of its operative ontology.
It is a profound claim. Let's really unpack it. What Professor T is arguing is that whether you are looking at a single individual navigating a divorce,
or a massive corporation trying to survive a market shift,
or an entire civilization grappling with artificial intelligence, failure almost never comes from a lack of raw cognitive intelligence.
and it rarely comes from a lack of material resources. Think about the classic example of Kodak. It's taught in every business school.
Kodak didn't fail because they lacked smart engineers. They actually invented the first digital camera.
And they didn't fail because they lacked money. They were a global behemoth.
They failed because they could not revise their ontology, their core, mustified assumption of what the photography business fundamentally was.
They assumed, at a bedrock level, that photography meant selling chemical film. They couldn't see that their actual business was helping humans capture memories.
The failure came from invisible, mustified assumptions that they refused to revise.
And now apply that Kodak dynamic to our entire global civilization. The paper argues that the scarcity premium of our entire era is migrating rapidly.
In the past, physical resources, capital, and data were scarce. Now, with AI, cognition and data are abundant.
The new scarcity premium is migrating toward capacities that resist algorithmic commoditization. It is migrating toward reflective agency, meaning-making, and wisdom.
And because we haven't developed those capacities at scale, you can see the symptoms of a civilizational adaptation gap everywhere right now.
The paper lists them out, and it reads like the front page of any newspaper today.
Epidemics of meaning deficit and mental health crises as people's traditional paths to identity are automated away.
Extreme identity political conflict, where people cling to rigid political tribes because they need certainty in a chaotic world. Deep institutional paralysis.
And perhaps most visibly, this wild, erratic cultural oscillation between two extreme poles, techno-utopianism and techno-nihilism.
Yes. When you look at the news, it feels like an endless cycle of doom scrolling. You have one camp of billionaires saying, AI is a godlike entity that will solve all disease and bring us a utopian age of leisure.
And in the exact same news cycle, you have very smart people saying AI is an existential threat that is going to turn humanity into paperclips and destroy the world in 5 years.
What Professor T is saying is that both of these extremes are just civilization-scale anxiety responses.
We are freaking out because our collective assumptions about human uniqueness are breaking.
We are demanding premature closure. We either want the fairy tale ending or the apocalyptic ending, because both endings offer certainty.
That is a phenomenal reading of the cultural climate. A civilization that only invests its capital and its educational focus into technical capabilities,
Like building faster microchips and training more powerful large language models.
while completely ignoring the ontological development of its citizens, is headed for a massive, potentially catastrophic adaptation gap.
Cultivating reflective agency isn't just a nice self-help goal for your weekend retreat. According to TRI, it is a civilizational imperative.
If we do not learn how to collectively revise our reality models, the sheer velocity of technological acceleration will simply tear our social fabric apart.
We will be driving a Ferrari using a map from 1500 AD.
Exactly.
Okay, wow. We have covered an immense, staggering amount of ground today. Let me try to synthesize this journey we've been on.
It's been a lot to process.
We started by defining the ontological adaptation gap, that fundamental, agonizing human struggle between the accelerating speed of the external world and our own desperate biological need for certainty and stable reality models.
We looked at how historical eras slowly commoditize human muscle and then human information processing.
And we faced the stark reality that the AI era is now commoditizing cognition itself.
And we explored the deep psychological mechanisms, mystification, ego attachment, ambiguity, and tolerance that make us fight so hard against adapting to that reality.
Exactly. And the ultimate key to not just surviving, but actually thriving and finding joy in this new era is developing reflective agency.
It's moving through those 5 stages, from being dependent on fixed, fragile assumptions to becoming an active agent who can consciously rewrite their own map of the world.
If there's one core synthesis to take away from this profound document, it is this.
While the AI era presents challenges that are historically unprecedented in their speed and scale, it also does something quite beautiful.
It forces a reckoning, yes, but it reveals what makes us uniquely, irreducibly human.
For centuries, we confused our economic utility with our humanity. Once the raw cognitive processing, the data hoarding, and the routine tasks are stripped away and handed to the machines, what is left?
What is left is our ability to construct meaning out of chaos, our ability to tolerate profound ambiguity and still act with grace.
And our capacity to consciously, reflectively rewrite our own models of reality to serve each other better. AI cannot do that. That is the true human premium.
That is the human premium. I absolutely love that framing. It turns a story about technological threat into a story about human liberation.
It really does.
And to you listening, as you go about the rest of your week, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to really chew on long after this deep dive is over.
Think about a core belief or a deeply held professional assumption that you rely on every single day.
The specific skill or title that makes you feel valuable in your own eyes and in the eyes of your peers. Now, I want you to imagine if an AI could do that exact thing perfectly, flawlessly by tomorrow morning.
Who would you be?
Would you let your ego take the wheel, dig in your heels, and defend your old identity to the bitter, exhausting end?
Or would you use your reflective agency to step back, look at the blank canvas of a new reality, and build a completely new, more expansive version of yourself?
The way you answer that question might just define your entire next decade. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an incredible conversation. We'll catch you next time.